Hey fish friends, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Zenzo from Tazawa Tanks. If you're watching this in the US, then hopefully you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. For those of you outside of the US, hopefully you're doing well anyway and had a great few days. But anyway, today's a little bit different of a video because we're handheld again. This is the first time I've done kind of the handheld vlog thing in a while. And reason why is we're doing a little bit different of a video where I'm going to feed all of my aquariums. I was stuffing my face the other day with turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie and everything, and I thought, it would be kind of fun to do a video about all of my fish eating. And I haven't really done a video like this before, and if I have, it's been a long time and it wouldn't be relevant now. I have made many videos about feeding fish, feeding food to your fish and how to feed them, etc., different types of fish, but I've never really gone through and fed all of my aquariums on video. So I thought that would be kind of fun to do today. Now, a couple things I do want to share with you. Number one, pretty much all the foods that I'm feeding today, I don't pay for. I do have a fish food sponsor, which is Extreme Aquatic Foods, so I'm very fortunate to have their support, so I don't pay for my foods. However, I'm not paid. They don't give me money to use their foods. I chose them because I really do believe in the product. I really liked the results that I saw when I did some testing, and I've fed other fish food before in the past, and I have had free food from many other companies in the past as well, so I chose Extreme, so I do want to put that out there. And then the other thing I do want to share is that the video quality will be kind of off and on. As you can tell right here, I'm wearing a camera. There's one of me, and I want to be able to use both hands to feed fish and capture it on film. So I'm going to try to get some footage from my chest mount here, and then the audio may not work through this because it won't be as good. So then we'll do some voiceover audio as well. So other than that, everything's pretty straightforward. Just wanted to share with you guys. A lot of people ask me all the time what I feed my fish and how do I feed them. Now, these are only some of the foods that I feed my fish. Now, there are times when I'll feed them fresh vegetables like my plecos. There will be times when I'll feed live snails to my puffers, frozen bloodworms, frozen brine shrimp. But today we're going to do just some live foods that I have and also some of the extreme aquatic foods that are already processed. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and feed some fish. So I thought what we'll do is we'll start off with some of these mealworms. So these are some mealworms that I just buy from Petco. You have to keep these refrigerated, and so I just keep them in my refrigerator down here. And I will feed these to some of my fish, like my green spot puffer, my mud skippers, my figure 8 puffer will eat these, and they will gobble these up. So what I'm going to do is kind of spread out some of these mealworms to give to some of these fish. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of sorting out the mealworms. If you are squeamish, you can always use some tweezers to grab these out, but they don't bother me, so I just use my fingers. But what I'm doing is I'm grabbing a couple of these smaller mealworms, and I am putting them in my little quarantine African mud skipper tank. This is that rescue one that I have. It's super shy. You can see it there down below under the rock, so I just kind of set a couple on the island there. You can't really see because of the clarity of the glass, but he'll jump up and eat those right away. Definitely my green spotted puffer loves to eat pretty much anything alive, so he's chowing down on the mealworms, and you can see all those empty broken snail shells from past meals. Voracious appetite. Beautiful fish. I really do love this fish and love to watch it eat, and you can actually hear the crunching of eating. Now we're going to the African mud skipper tank paludarium, as well as the figure 8 puffer. So in here, throwing some mealworms both on the water section and on kind of the land section, so that the food's kind of spread out. They can be quite aggressive. Just want to make sure that the puffer gets some to eat, and then the mud skippers, they kind of have to have theirs spread out. You can see that display of aggression. That's kind of like, hey, back off, this meal is mine, kind of a warning when those fins pop up. So that's kind of their way of displaying, so you can see kind of the size difference between them. Some of them are quite large here. But what will happen is if another mud skipper gets too close and they want to protect their food, they will flare up their
dorsal fin like that, and it's quite brilliant, very beautiful. Now we're going to grab some brine shrimp and feed some live baby brine to some of my fish.
All right, so next we're going to feed some of this baby brine shrimp. This is live baby brine shrimp that I hatched in the brine shrimp hatchery, and I just put it in this cup ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and use this dropper to feed it to a bunch of my fish. So we're going to give it to my gold ocellatus here. And the reason why I like to kind of mix it up and break it up is to just give the fish a varied diet, where, you know, sometimes if you give a certain food all the time, you might not get the same spawning activity. You may not get all the right nutrients in them all the time. So I like to break it up and give a variety. So right now I'm giving it to my Neolamprologus multifasciatus, my shell dwellers, and my gold ocellatus, my other shell dwellers. So these are quite small. It's kind of like us eating, I don't know, raisins or something, quite small, but still they can gobble up a bunch of them and get some good nutrients. And while we're at it, we're going to go ahead and give some to the bumblebee gobies in the Indian mudskipper tank here. And we'll also give some to the guppies. And then we'll, since we have the baby brine shrimp, I'm going to go ahead and give some to my blennies over here. We've got our blennies. Let me just get some footage of them.
So these are the top hat blennies. They're a brackish water fish. They eat a lot of algae and stuff like that, but I do give them some brine shrimp from time to time. And then, while I didn't have my mic on here, but also feeding some to the Fowler tank. This is a fish only with live rock tank, as well as the Brichardi tank. So we've got a bunch of Brichardi here, a bunch of fry in here as well. So having this fresh live baby brine shrimp really does help in some growth spurts as well as some spawning.
Go ahead and put some here in the molly and fiddler crab tank, as they'll all eat this as well. This is great for the babies in here, and the fiddlers will also grab it when it's nearby and kind of on the rocks and leaves. They'll grab it and eat that as well, but mostly the fish get this stuff. All right, so now that we've fed the brine shrimp, I'm going to go over and feed some flake food. Now, one of the things I do like to do is I like to use a spoon or a scooper. This happens to be an Aquarium Co-op measuring spoon. It's got a teaspoon on one side and a tablespoon on the other side. And this just limits my need to having to reach in. I do have larger hands, so sometimes, depending on the food, it can be hard for me to fit my hand into the container. So I just like to use a spoon and we'll scoop it out. And then I can just kind of dish it out to the fish evenly, depending on the kind of food. So in this example, we've got the krill flake, my extreme krill flake, and we'll just sprinkle some here on the rock for the mudskippers. These are the Indian mudskippers, and they love this stuff. So you can see them, they'll start jumping on the rocks here, and they'll start grazing right on the rocks, eating the flake food, and you can see it all over the face there of this little guy. What's funny is actually I think that's the little one that I brought back from Colorado with me, and it always seems to be the one that's the most bold with the biggest appetite, maybe because it's growing still. But here you can see they'll just jump right on the rock and they'll start eating that the flake food. So a real good quality food. And then sometimes when they get it all over their bodies, they'll jump in the water, and then the bumblebee gobies will also eat it. Now, going along with the same spoon, so I still have this scoop here, so I can, if I was going to feed like my guppies or my shell dwellers, I would just keep going on and sprinkling some. We're going to give some to the 5-star General Fry in here. And they are getting quite big. I did sell about 20 of them already to the store. I've got another batch that's ready to go here in about a week or so. And then going around, we're going to throw some of this in this Brine tank too, even though we did give them some krill. And we're also going to put some in the Tanganique and Julidochromis and Calvus tank. And the Calvus have been more and more bold lately, which is nice. They're not as shy as they used to be. Now we're going to go over to the Spirulina. This is the Spirulina flake from Extreme. So I will give this to fish that have a little bit more of a herbivore diet. My blennies will eat this quite often, but I like to give this to my Mbuna. So if I want a lot of it, I can just kind of dish it out like so. And we'll put this right here in the Mbuna tank. This is also a favorite of my Pseudotropheus here, my Solosi, or Chindongo, whatever you want to call them. Another fish that loves the flake food are these silver dollars. All right, moving on, we've got the big fella from Extreme Aquatics. This is a pellet food, and I'll put some here for the Congos, and they'll eat it up pretty quickly. And also the 5-star Generals. And last but not least, we're going to feed the Oscar tank, and we're going to give the Oscars some of these Extreme monster pellets. These are just much larger pellets than what we fed the peacocks. Now, sometimes when I've got the camera in here, they can be very shy, so they may not eat right away.
Now we're upstairs. I just wanted to show you guys the feeder that I use sometimes to feed my planet tank. You can see the food floating up top and coming back down. There's pellets and flake in there, but you can see here that I also like to feed them live food, and I often feed them live baby brine in this tank or live daphnia, which I've made videos about before. Another live food that I keep outside. There's a lot of fish in here, and there's a lot of plant growth, so it can handle the amount of food that I put in there. But they just love every time I put live food. I don't do live food that often in this tank, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, and the rest of the time they just get the dry foods. But they just go to town every time I put the live baby brine shrimp or any other live foods in there. Same thing with these guys. This is the Tanganique tank in my living room. With my Brine and my Shellies, my shell dwellers. And the live brine shrimp is great because it's so small and so nutrient rich that it gets down to the very tiny fry down there at the bottom. I do have an Oscar upstairs, and I did feed him, but he doesn't like being on camera as well. I think it was a time of day. There was kind of a light behind me. Then I do have a pond out on my patio, so I just threw some of the extreme pellet food out there, and I also feed some larger pellets sometimes for the koi separately, but just threw some pellets out there. Now we are up on the third floor. This is my office. Um, and in here, I've got my little mini pond with my live bears, guppies in there, and they also got some live baby brine today, although they often eat just flake food. And then here we can see my betta also will eat the baby brine. They're almost a little bit too small for him. He's a real old betta. Eyesight's starting to go. He's several years old now, but he still will eat them up. It just takes him a while to get them. And then another tank here in the office, which is another live bear tank with guppies, and they also love to chow down on these baby brine shrimp.
Okay, so we ended up feeding in the house. We fed the 3 tanks in the living room, threw some fish food in the pond, and fed my tanks on my mini pond here in my office, which is on the 3rd floor. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this video. We'll see how it turns out from the footage that I took, but hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you want to know where to get some of these fish foods that I fed today, I will put a link down below in the description. That's all I had for now. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.